All right, so we are literally jumping in where we just left off. So there's two key windows that you're going to need for this. That is going to be this Effects tab with all of these effects down here, and it's going to be the Effect Controls tab up here. Now, I kind of said in the last video, I won't show you how to color grade and what have you in these videos. I have tutorials, but I'll dip into them quickly so you get an idea. There's two approaches to this. We can either add effects directly onto the video, certain effects you need to do that for, such as warp stabilizers and everything like that. Other effects we can add on using an adjustment layer, which is better for when you need to add the same effect over multiple clips, such as color grading. So let's say you're going for the Breaking Bad, they're in the middle of the desert in Mexico look, and you've got multiple clips of people talking. Rather than trying to color grade every single clip to make it yellow, you can literally just go into the adjustment layer, drag it over the top, and that will do it for you. So let's start with how we add effects directly onto the videos. Then we'll move on to the adjustment layers, and then we'll move on to just having a little play around and see what the effects actually do. So let's start with color grading stuff now. Just go to video effects. I've got one here called color correction, and you get a ton of options here. Okay. The one that I tend to use is this, Lumetri. It does everything. All of these are kind of specialized to specific things. Lumetri is kind of an all-rounder. How do I use that? Same as the transitions, I drag it onto the video this time that I want to add the effect to. And I make sure I'm selected on there. And now if I go up to my effect controls, I'll just kind of collapse these to make it easier to see. You'll see I've now got this one here called Lumetri Color. Now, I would be here for days on end showing you what every single thing in here does. So I'm just going to kind of show you the basics of how to play around with these things. It's really up to you to play around and see what you can get out of it. The best way to learn is just by doing, right? So let's go to basic correction. Now, the nice thing about Lumetri is you have these things called lookup tables, and that is essentially pre-made effects. You've got a few listed here, but if I kind of scroll down and I go to creative, click on that one, we've got tons in here, and they're all based on either specific camera looks or specific styles. So if I want to make this kind of like a crime noir sort of black and white thing, I can click on that and it will take all the color away and it will add in some really nice shadows and everything like that. Maybe I want to go for orange. All right, and what this one does, this is a pretty popular one. It tends to boost those kind of orange and blue tones, to be honest with you. It's pretty popular in cinema, if I'm being honest. Change that to, maybe I want like more of a kind of washed out look. This tobacco one looks quite good for that. Western. Here it just kind of, again, washes some of the colour out, but focuses on like those yellows. They've got some that are really obvious, like Matrix green. There you go. It kind of makes everything look like it's in the Matrix. It's not really green, ironically. I'd say it's more blue. But the blue one there is a bit more subtle. Matrix Mars, which just kind of pops the red tones. And again, it depends on the clip. You really need to figure out what works for what you've shot. Some of them are just based on specific cameras. So monochromatic Kodaks, for example. There you go. It's like a nice black and white based on that particular Kodak. What other ones are there? Again, just kind of play around, see what they do. There's a lot that are just black and white. Tense blue. There you go. Pretty nice. So those are the LUTs. We'll come back to that in a second. I just kind of want to focus on this stuff up here. I'm just going to get rid of that one, actually. So that we'll see. None. There we go, what the clip originally looks like. All right, so there are kind of two stages to color correction. Again, I do this on my color correction, color grading tutorial. But color correction is essentially fixing the black and the white tones. And what you're trying to do is look for consistency in your shots, because you're going to have different angles, different types of lighting naturally, and you can kind of control that more in the studio. But yeah, you're going to have inconsistencies, and it's about trying to get it consistent. So that's color correction. Color grading is what we've just looked at. It's kind of giving it a specific look. So here we have temperature. Left makes it colder. Cold is blue. Warm is red, yellowy, orange. All right, so temperature will kind of give you that. So if you've shot and you've noticed that everything, sometimes you'll see in, if you shoot with like fluorescent lights, so the sort of things you see in an office or, hey, a college building, like where you are right now, then you will notice that it tends to come out quite blue, and often you have to give it a little bit of warmth. Likewise, sometimes if you're shooting outside, especially if you're kind of using that golden hour, where the sun's really low down, sort of sunset or sunrise sort of time, it can sometimes be a bit too yellow. So you can kind of take that out. Tint goes green to pink. Saturation is a sort of intensity of that color. And then we start moving into kind of just the general black and white tones. Exposure is brightness of it, really. This is something we'll be talking about, trying to make sure you get in camera. If your shot's overexposed, so if you shoot and it looks like that, there's no fixing it. Likewise, if you shoot and everything's super dark, there's really no fixing it. So that doesn't really fix anything, to be honest with you. Contrast, again, it kind of just adds in the amount of difference between those black and white tones. Highlights, shadows, white tones, black tones. Okay. Again, the reset button is your best friend here. So that's kind of your basic correction. You can go right into that. I'll be honest, I'm going to leave everything from curves down because that gets a bit more specific. But you can see here, we've just got a few more looks. We've already looked at the LUTs. If I add in blue intense, I can change the intensity of that LUT using that. Okay, I'm just going to turn that off. No. Okay. I can make it look faded. I can make it look sharper. Sharper does not mean better, by the way. Vibrance is one I do tend to use, especially if I'm shooting like an advert or something that's meant to feel happy. Vibrance is good. It just makes those colors really burst. And we've got saturation again. What's quite nice here is that we have the tints and we have a bit more control over the individual colors that we're getting. So shadows, I might want to be quite green. My highlights, I might want to be more yellow. You can see here, I can start to customize my colors as much as I want. Now, the problem is here that I've done this on one clip, and maybe I want the exact same thing on this clip. Well, two options. I can copy off of that one, and then right-click and paste attributes, and then it will let me select which effects I want to copy and paste over. That takes too long. So what can we do instead? If I go to my project bin, not that one, this one, here we go. I'm going to go to this little folded post-it note again, click that. I'm going to add an adjustment layer. And it will kind of ask you to set it up. It should default to what you've got. So press that, you'll see it pops up here. Drag it on top and you'll see we get this little pink bar. I want that to be the length of my two shots. Now, if I add the effect to this instead of that, so I'm going to get rid of it off of here, goodbye Lumetri, I can just click on it, press delete. I'm going to add the effect to this instead. So effects, Lumetri, and just for the sake of showing you what it does really obviously, go for that blue intense again. Boom, 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 boom. Blue intense should also be over the next clip. Boom. Now, if you're not sure if it's worked or not, just take it off. Boom. All right, so blue, not blue. Blue, not blue. Blue, not blue. Here's a great example of that thing of consistency in your clips, right? So making sure that they're all within the same sort of tone. Blue is really obvious here because of the kind of black and white tones of that first clip, whereas this second clip was more yellowy orange in its tone, plus the blue doesn't stand out as much. It kind of just washes the yellow away. Right, so that's the importance of doing that. All right, so that's kind of how we add adjustment layers. Let's just see what some of these other effects do. So we also have things like lens flare, so I might want to click on that. And again, all my adjustments for this are going to be over here in my effects tab. So I can change the brightness of that lens flare. I can change the type of lens it is as well, which is quite nice. 105mm prime. Try and blend it a little bit more. Okay. Also change where that flare is. So maybe you want it to look like the sun is like shining on it over the sky here. Very nice. Okay. So that's pretty fun. What other effects we got? There are tons, and there are some that won't really work with these clips. Like warp stabilizer, for example, can be your best friend when it comes to getting your shots looking stable. This shot is already stable, so it's not going to really do anything. Some of them I've not really played with before. What does this one do? Right, so 12. What's this going to do? Well, what it says on the tin, I guess. There you go. Not sure why you'd want that. Maybe for kind of a funky transition. What else we got? What else we got? Generate lightning. This one's always quite fun. There you go. Add in lightning. Got tons of options for this. I always accidentally add this one when I'm trying to do generate lighting, which is under a different folder. Keying and stuff is all your green screen. We'll go over that. I've got another video already on that. You've got some obsolete effects. These are ones that are on older versions of Adobe. Kind of a purist, so I tend to go for these ones, to be honest with you, because I know what they do. Stylize. You've got tons of things in here, so you can add in effects to make it look pixely, maybe. Maybe you want it, give it that kind of analog horror look. No? Yeah, there's tons. Honestly, there's only one way to really learn them, and that is to go through and play them all. Some of them are, not really going to add much. So, for example, it's the one for adding in time code. Here we go. So if I drag that on, it just adds a time code at the bottom. That is usually just for reference. So if you're doing some Foley, for example, you want this up on the screen and you've told yourself, oh, I need to make a cow moo at 4 seconds, 37 frames, whatever, then this is what you'd use. But generally speaking, sometimes we use that to, make a little countdown timer and stuff. But yeah, that is that really. So that is effects in a nutshell. The next thing is going to be about keyframing, and that is about how we then get an effect to start, say, here at one level and then maybe grow more intense as we go. So maybe we want that lens flare to get brighter as we go along. All right. So that's the next one.